stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. We got one of the most iconic names in the history of wrestling, or from the most iconic families in the history of wrestling. He was one of the greatest tag teams in the history of wrestling and one of the greatest commentaries. He's one of the greatest on so many different levels. He is Mr. Raymond Rougeau. Raymond, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. You're making me blush with that introduction. I'm shy here.
All those things are true. You got one of the greatest family names in the history of wrestling. You've done so much for WWE as far as the tag team. Everybody remembers the fabulous Rougeaus, and then you did a commentator for years and years and years.
I appreciate it.
And also is the most fabulous mayor in it.
That's right.
There you go. There you go. And you know, John, I remember when I came back for the WWE Network, when we were doing the pay-per-views every month, the first time I was back, you mentioned the commentary, how, you know, it was great to have me back on. I thought that was really nice of you mentioning that it was, you were happy to see me back on the broadcast team for the WWE. It touched me.
I was very happy to see you back. You know, some guys are just, they light up a room. You light up a room when you come in it, and it's always great to have you around. So it was really fun to have you back.
I appreciate it. It was a good time. And I always had a good time with both you guys.
Hey, speaking of that, Raymond, you know, I remember the first time I ran across you, I think it was Miami. You came down with your father. Your father used to come down. He had a really good relationship with Eddie Graham, right? And
correct.
You guys used to come down there during the winter break here because your territory only ran during the summertime. So I remember you bumping into you. Were just starting in the business. You were what? Young. You were like 17, 18 when you started in the business?
I was 16 when I started in the business. Wow. Yeah, wow. I just turned 16.
You were still in high school when you started?
Yes,
that must have been exciting as hell, man. You growing up. I was going to ask you, when did you realize your family was such a predominant name in our industry? But it really wasn't that. You were a predominant name while you were still a kid growing up in high school, man. So, and you were main event cards, and I was going to ask you about that because we all know when we have, like, I had a brother and I was elevated a little, probably too quickly in a couple of places. We kind of paid for it, but did the locker room? Did you ever have any issues in the locker room? Some of the old grizzly old timers saying, "Hey, kid," you know.
Yeah, in the beginning, yes, because you know when you're 16 years old, they don't take it seriously. They look at you like a kid. You haven't paid your dues, which is fine. I understood that. I knew it came with the territory. Eventually, with time, there's a respect that you create, and all of a sudden, if you start achieving good things, you do good things, and you're doing the right things, all of a sudden they start respecting you. They say this kid's got potential, you know, and it starts. But you have to pay your dues. I mean, there's no shortcut or any shortcut to get through it. You have to pay your dues.
Yeah, let's go back before your dad approached you. Were you in high school sports, or was you an athlete? Or I mean, your dad and your uncle's an iconic name also in this business too. And when did you realize, man, my name carries some weight around here?
Actually, I grew up in it. It's not that I actually all of a sudden found out that we had let's say a famous name. It was always there because when I was a little kid, my uncle Johnny and my father were already household names in Quebec. So when I went to school with the family name, they said, "Are you related to, Johnny?" And yes. So I grew up with it. So it's not something that developed. It's just something I was born into, grew accustomed to, and for me it was a normality.
Did you ever get any childhood fight defending the business or anything like that?
No, I didn't have to. I didn't have to. People, I don't know. I guess people just respected me. I didn't have to prove anything. In my career, a few times, little things came up, but it's not that you look for it. Sometimes it finds you, and you don't have a choice because you have to. If the situation arouses, you have to stand up to the situation. You have to, take care of it. Otherwise, you're not going to survive in this business.
Right.
What was your background as far? You were a boxer, right?
My dad was a Golden Gloves champion, and he taught me to box when I was a kid. I was probably 8, 9 years old, and he put the gloves on with me. I mean, he took it easy on me because, you know, he would have knocked me out. But he taught me how to defend myself. He taught me how to box. And the reason for that is he says, I don't want to teach you this so you become a bully and look for fights. But he says, if ever need be, you'll be able to take care of yourself. And I boxed with all the kids in the neighborhood, you know, and my dad would referee the matches and stuff, and I'd box with my dad. And so basically, my dad's the one that taught me how to take care of myself, which came in handy a few times.
I was there. I know we're jumping way ahead, but I was there because I'm excited to see you. I was there when George Chuvalo was the referee with you and Owen in Montreal, and George Chuvalo was so funny because I was in the dressing room. You know, after you guys got done, we all went back to the dressing room because the match was over. George Chuvalo came in and he told George Steele, he goes, "Yeah, I tapped him pretty good." And George Steele says, "You're not supposed to tap him pretty good." And Owen comes in and he's got glass eyes. He's holding his jaw. You know, Chuvalo really got him.
I remember at the end when Chuvalo hit him, it went slack. I went, damn. I was hoping Owen didn't have his jaw broken because he got hit really hard.
Yeah, they were helping Owen to the back. You know, Owen was fine with it. You know, George was a great heavyweight. He was a tough guy. Fought Muhammad Ali. I mean, he was a legit guy.
He went 15 rounds with Muhammad Ali. You know, I mean, you know, to do that, you have to be pretty good. He was a tough guy. He had big hands. You saw him. He's a big guy.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
And, you know, Owen was expecting a working punch probably, and all of a sudden, you know, he got his head knocked off his shoulders.
But it was
and
so
then
funny.
we all know Owen too. That Owen was probably working that punch a little bit too. You know, even though it was stiff, we could all tell it was stiff. But Owen being Owen, of course, Owen had to get the most out of it, and he certainly did.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure that George did not intentionally want to hurt Owen or something. And like you said, Owen took advantage of the situation and played it out. But it was a good shot. I mean, I heard it and I turned. I was like, "What? What's that?"
Owen's
Owen's
eyes were watering when he came back. He's holding his jaw. I'm like, oh my God. He just got punched by a great heavyweight boxer.
Oh, he sure did. Hey, that's an honor, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, a world-class heavyweight boxer too. So as you're breaking in, you're approached by your dad when you're around 15, 16 years old, asked if you want to be in the business, and you're still a kid, of course, at this time, and you're probably looking at TV and saying, "Man, look at those guys. I don't know if I can handle those."
Well, you're almost right there. You're almost right there, Jerry. My dad approached me when I was 13 years old to ask me if I wanted to wrestle. And like you said, I was looking at the guys on TV. I wasn't smart for the business then, you know. I'm looking at that. I'm 13 years old, weighed 98 pounds. I'm like, never, you know. And my dad said, if you listen to me and you do what I tell you, at 16 years old, he said, I guarantee you'll have your first match. I worked out 365 days a year. Wow. And I remember one year, I think I was 14 or 15. There was one day I skipped in the year. You know, I was at school, training in the gym, in the ring in Montreal every day, working out on the weights to build my body. School after that. There was one time I had a cold in the winter, it was around February. I didn't work out that day, but every day my dad would come back from wrestling or something. The next day he said, "You work out last night? What did you do?" One time I said, "I didn't work out. I was sick yesterday." He says, "You're lazy. You could have done some anyways." Oh man, that killed me. I worked out 364 days that year.
That's right. And you got in trouble.
I got in trouble because I skipped one. I was sick.
Hey, Raymond, what was it about Montreal? You know, territories are so different, and Toronto was so different from Montreal. I understand it's complete different language and different, you know, culture and all that, but stars weren't really created in Toronto. You know, San Martino came in there and kind of built the name there. Whipper Billy Watson went and came back. But in Montreal, you guys created a bunch of names, and that territory was one of the greatest territories in the history of the business. What was it about Montreal that made it work so well?
I think it's the passion that the fans had for the business. Like you said, my uncle, my father, they were huge baby faces. My uncle, the thing is, he mingled in a lot of things. He mingled in politics. He was the prime minister's bodyguard, best friends with the prime minister of Quebec. He owned the nightclub downtown Montreal. He was in with the hockey, you know, Canadian Hockey League. He became the president of it. So his name was so credible and was so connected that he was everywhere. And he was very good with the media. He showed me when I was young, we do the media tours and stuff. He introduced me to all the newspaper guys, the owners of the newspapers. He was very well connected. So the thing, he was able to get a lot of media attention. And when you get a lot of media attention, and now I'm talking back in the 60s and 70s, when you were on TV, you were a star. Today, a lot of people on TV, you have 5 million stations. Back then, you had maybe 5 different stations. And if you were on TV, you were something big. And so I think that helped. And the thing is, they put wrestling on a prime time also. We were viewed back then by 10% of the population would watch, the whole province population would watch the wrestling shows every week. So when I was 16 years old, I was on TV every week. I'd drive through Montreal with my car going somewhere. People would pass, they'd turn. At 16, they'd stop, honk, wave to me and stuff. I'm 16 years old because I've been on TV, you know. I think it's part of also, maybe with the French, it's kind of like the Latino hot blood, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
So I think there could be a little bit of that in there. They're so passionate. And the thing was, you know, being from Quebec, and like, we're the only province in Canada that is a French province. And we're surrounded by North America. We're basically the only province that's French. So there was like a solidarity there. And when you had French athletes like my uncle, my father, myself, my brothers that came into the business, it's like we're so small compared to North America. They were so passionate for us. I think that contributed to it. Like you had Edouard Carpentier, Yvon Robert. Those were French-speaking athletes. So, like I said, I think.
And the Vachons. Don't forget the Vachons too, because they were Olympians.
Yeah. Mad Dog Maurice, Paul the Butcher Vachon. So there were good talent. So I mean, there were talent that made it throughout the world. So Quebec had a base of, let's say, very talented wrestlers that had a very deep background and that were very passionate about the business. So I think that transpired in the matches, which transpired in the follow-up for the media, which was contagious for the fans.
You had such a hot territory. You had such a famous name. Was it hard going to math and social studies at 16 in high school and being told what to do?
No, that didn't bother me. The worst thing is all the teachers wanted to arm wrestle with me. You know,
tremendous.
But I beat them all, so that's cool.
Did you? How about when I assume you had good grades too? When they all arm wrestle for an A. You know?
No, actually, I did okay in school. But you know, the thing was, when I started the business, when my dad asked me at 13 if I wanted to be a professional wrestler, as any 13-year-old kid, you want to please your dad. So at 13, I wasn't looking at the guys in the ring. Hey, I want to do that. No, I was happy to watch my dad wrestle. He was my hero. But the thing was, when he asked me and the way he asked me, I knew the answer he wanted to hear was, yes, I'd like to do that. So I said yes to please him. But then the passion developed. The more I trained, the more I developed, the more I got into it, the more I felt, yeah, this was maybe what I do want to do.
Did boxing ever cross your mind? Because you're an accomplished boxer too.
Actually, it's funny because my grandfather, my father's dad, was also a boxer. And when I was probably 11 or 12 years old, he asked me, he said, you'd probably be a pretty good boxer. He bought me a speed bag and a heavy bag. I was like 11, 12 years old. I said, maybe, you know, and things developed. Finally, I went into the wrestling business. But had I not got into the wrestling business, I was going to be a Quebec provincial police, like your state trooper in the, because, you know, I don't know. I thought that would be pretty exciting too, you know.
You were going to be an actual Mountie.
Actually, yeah. Well, no, the Mountie is on the federal side. I was going to be more the provincial side, but like your state trooper, you know. So, but I looked at, because I knew a couple of them because friends of mine in school, their dads were police officers. And I looked, they had their squad cars, and I looked, and I'd see them with the sirens and going. I said, that must be pretty neat. You know, I guess the adrenaline rush would have been cool. But the thing was back then too is, the job of a policeman was different than it is today. Today, you have to be a psychologist. And if you look at somebody funny, you're going to get sued. Back then, you could be a policeman, you know?
Right.
And I don't know, that related to me a little more.
Who was
So when
who
your dad,
go ahead, Jerry.
go ahead. When your dad finally approached you, and you consented, yeah, I kind of like to do this. So you train every day. So you started training. You missed that 1 day, 1 year or so. How long did you actually do the training before he said that? And how was your first match? And when did he start telling you the workings of the work of wrestling?
Yeah, I trained for 3.5 years before my first match.
Wow.
Wow.
And 3.5 years. And for the last 2 years, I was in the gym 5 days a week wrestling. So I had guys, you probably remember Luigi Macera. You remember him?
I remember that, yeah.
He trained me. There was Gino Brito.
He was that great Mexican guy, a journeyman. It went territory to territory,
Yes.
right? He went to
Yeah, and he was pretty good in Portland, Oregon at one time.
Yeah.
But he was living in Montreal. So my uncle paid Luigi to train me. I had 2 Mexican wrestlers train me. I had Gino Brito, and I had my dad. Let me tell you this little story about my dad. When I started, they didn't smart me up to the business, and I don't know, I just didn't think of asking if it's work. They started to, we started wrestling pretty stiff. And at one point, we lock up. My dad, was a big guy. He was 6'4", 245. He pushes me in the rope, and he says, at one point, he says, okay, now if the referee says break, what do you do? We're collar and elbow, get in the rope. I said, well, I'll break. I put my hands up. He slapped me across the face. Whap! He says, always protect yourself. I was like, oh, man. That's how my training started in the business.
Tremendous. So when did you first start getting smartened up to that it's a work?
At one point, well, when they had, not long after we started in the ring, because if you're going to teach me how to work, you have to smarten me up to the business. Otherwise, I'm trying to shoot, and they're going to shoot with me. That I'm not learning anything, So probably I'd say the first month, they didn't smarten me up. It was just learning how to fall. And the ring was like falling on a board of plywood, no padding or anything. I'd go to school with scabs on my elbows, scabs on my knees.
Wow.
You get through class, you get up, the scabs are dried. You have to crack them to be able to walk again. It was like that every day. But for them, it's like, we're going to toughen them up. And if you can go through that, then we'll smarten them up. So I went through that. Then eventually my dad explained very delicately, if you want to have a good match, you have to cooperate a bit with the guy. And he started, because back then it was so set in your mind, you protect the business at all costs. I remember my dad doing an angle, and I was there. He came home, he was off the rest of the week. He sold it all week, just so we didn't know, So for him to tell me, it was a big thing. But then they almost had me swear into omerta, a sworn secrecy of the business, which I respect that, because when I came in 1971, I was smartened up in 1969. You protect the business, and I mean, I've roughed up a few people that tried to discredit the business because it's that's what the business was back then. So it's like old school, and I think that's what I like about people that went, we'll say old timers, because they went through different generations. I was in the business beginning of the 70s. I went through the 80s up to 90, So I went through the generations and the transitions in the business, but I never forgot the basic of the business and where I came from.
And when you started there in Montreal, did you think, I'm going to go be a traveler? I mean, because your uncle and your dad could stay there because they had that big name. They had the territory. Were you thinking that I'm going to be this guy that's going to be traveling around and going all kinds of places? Or do you think I'm just going to be here in Montreal like my dad and my uncle and be here for most of my career?
I thought I was going to be here most of my career. Actually, I was hoping I'd be here most of my career because I'm a homebody. I like being home. And so for me, it was fine. We had a good territory. You know, we made decent money.
And you're
business-
running 7 nights a week too, right? So it's like you're working every night.
Oh, for like 6 months of the year, we'd work 7 days a week. But then in the winter, like when we hit in the fall till the spring, we'd work 2 shots a week. So I had a lot of time off, which was good. But in the summertime, we worked 7 days a week. But that's what the business was. I had started, when I started in the business, the fact that I was young, the fact that I was from a well-known family, I attracted the attention of different promoters in the northeastern United States. So at 17 years old, I used to fly in for Pedro Morales back then, to Rochester, New York, Syracuse, Buffalo, Cleveland, Akron. I'd go to Detroit for the Sheik, Eddie Farhat, in the early 70s. Then I'd fly to Toronto for Frank Tunney back then. When I started, it was Frank Tunney. So I was working northeastern United States. I did that from 71 until 76. In 76, the business had died. You know, it goes through cycles. Business was slow. There was no more TV and stuff. And I left. I went to Atlanta. And that's for 3 years. I went to Georgia Championship Wrestling. Ole Anderson was the booker. Jim Barnett was the promoter. 76, 77, 78, I went to Atlanta. That's where I met a lot of the guys. Ricky Steamboat was starting, Macho Man. I wrestled with Macho Man Randy Savage 1973 in the Cobo Arena in Detroit. I was 18 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Wrestled Wild Bull Curry.
Wow. How did you get around? How did you get around then? You're 17 years old. You're too young to rent a car. How did you get around once you flew into Rochester and Detroit, these places?
Took a taxi. But actually, I had my driver's license. I had my driver's license at 16 years old, and I had my own car at 16 years old. So I could get around. But when I flew into places, I'd take a taxi to get to the buildings and stuff. But yeah, and those were the days where I had to, let's say, earn the respect from the boys when I went to the States. Here in Quebec wasn't so bad. I had a few little incidences here, but especially when I went northeastern United States, I was wrestling guys that were already, let's say, 2/3 of their career done with this 17-year-old kid. They don't want to sell for me. They don't want to, you know, and we'll have a little high spot. That's all we'll give them. So I had to take a little more.
Approximately what were you weighing there too?
My official weight, my real weight, was about 190. Then they introduced me as 205, but I was 190, my real weight. But the guys back then that I worked with basically probably weighed 220, 225, you know, something like that. I was 190. So I was smaller than them. That's where I guess you had a, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was starting, earning respect, you know Hans Schmidt?
Hans Schmidt, yes.
Yeah. He had a reputation of being a stiff guy at times in the ring.
Yeah.
The first match I had with him, I was at the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. I'd say 1971 or 72. I was in Toronto. It was Hans Schmidt and Sweet Daddy Siki against my father and I at the Maple Leaf Gardens. So, and Schmidt came up to me before the match. I went to talk to him, you know, see what we were going to do. And he looked at me. He says, "Kid," he says, "I'm going to give you a kick in your chest you're going to remember for the rest of your life." I'm like, okay. That's it. What else am I going to say?
Yeah.
Schmidt was 6'4", 260. I'm 17 years old. Okay, it's part of the, you know. And I remember Sweet Daddy Siki. You remember he had a paralysis on the right side of his jaw. Do you remember that when he spoke?
Yes.
He came and told me before. He says, "Hey, kid, I just want to give you a warning." He says, "You see my mouth?" He says, "Schmidt did that to me." So he says, "Be careful when he hits." I said, "Okay." They were ribbing me, which was good.
Yeah.
And we got in the ring. And I remember at one point, he slams me. He picks up my legs. "Here it is, kid." And he comes up that big boot. He probably had like a size 15 boot. And I'm like, man, I braced for it, you know. He gave me a working kick, you know, a little snug, but working kick. He kicked me. I was expecting it to go right through my chest.
Yeah.
My reaction was when he kicked me, I didn't even sell it. I jumped up. I said, "Is that all?" And he looked at me. "You didn't sell it." And I ran out and tagged with my dad. But I never forgot that.
That's
Wow.
great.
Well, Raymond, I know I'm asking this question because you were 17, but I was like 22 years old. Certain guys, you know, that when I was young, I was a magazine guy, like a lot of us were. Go down the corner store and get the local magazine. Brute Bernard and Skull Murphy, they always really intimidated me. And then when I went to Australia at 21 years old, Brute Bernard were coming in for a couple of weeks before he went to Japan, and I had a match with Brute, and I was terrified. Of course, all the guys told Brute I was terrified of. Of course, he's a French Canadian too, but big Brute. I mean, he's 6'3", 280, something like that, and I had a reputation of really hitting guys hard and beating guys up, beating young guys up. So
Yeah.
here I think I'm the sacrificial lamb and everything. So. Well, but I remember standing in the ring, and all of a sudden he comes out and doing that Brute Bernard stuff. I got terrified. And so were there guys like that? But bottom line, when he got in the ring, the first thing he did, he grabbed a wrench, which scared me to death, and he come running in the ring. He said, "Throw me a backdrop, me cocksucker," you know, like he used to do. So I did. He dropped the wrench. He picked it up and hit me with it. So I picked it up and I hit him as lightly as I could, you know, and then threw the wrench away. But I was terrified of the guy, you know. Potato Man busted me open. Were there guys like that? I mean, at 17, you look across the ring with, "Holy cow, this guy could kill me if he wanted to."
There were some pretty tough guys in the business, but
Yeah.
nobody that was out to purposely injure me. One guy that was a bully, you probably heard of it, Lars Anderson.
Oh yeah, Lars, I know Lars well.
Yeah. Well, I wrestled him in 1976 in Atlanta when he came in. He was hurting a lot of the guys. And he had worked with, you remember Don Kernoodle?
Don, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So we're Atlanta TV on the Saturday morning. Don Kernoodle worked with Lars Anderson. Lars, I don't know. For what reason, I don't have a clue. He because Don was a good guy. I mean, he was just
Don could handle himself in the ring too.
Absolutely. But Lars took him down on on TBS, Atlanta TV in the morning, hit him below the belt, and I mean beat the crap out of him for no reason. That afternoon, we're in Columbus TV. He did the same thing to somebody else in Columbus TV. A week, and it kind of upset us a bit. I was 21 then. The week later, I'm in Griffin, Georgia. I'm working with Lars Anderson. So I'm like, okay. So during the dressing rooms were together back then in Griffin. I didn't even talk to him during the evening. Ole took us together and he says, "Okay, this is what I like for a finish. No problem." I went and sat down. I never even paid attention to him. He just paced up and down all evening looking at me before the match, trying to intimidate me. I don't know. I don't know what his problem was. And so we get into the ring. We didn't even have a spot prepared or anything. I just know the finish. That's all. We came in, and all of a sudden he says, "Okay, 1, 2." He hits me right in the jaw. Boom, bang. So I hit him back. He hits me again, starts hitting in the head. I start swinging. After about 2, 3 shots, this is a little abnormal, let's say. I hit him right in the solar plex. My fist probably went in right up to here in the solar plex. That was the end. He was the nicest guy with me after that. He was flying everywhere. He was, light as a feather.
I believe everything until you said he was flying everywhere, because Lars never flew anywhere.
Well, he flew that night.
And, he flew that night. Okay.
He flew that night, and he was soft as a feather after that. And every time he saw me, I never even brought it up after the match. He says, "Thank you." I said, "Thank you." Never even mentioned a word. I just showed him he wasn't alone in the ring, and I wasn't going to put up with his crap, but he respected me for it. And Ole respected, because Ole was watching, he knew Lars. Ole liked me, watched. Ole always respected me for that.
Yeah, that was the thing with Gene, Ole, and Lars, all three of those guys. If you fought back with them, they gave you a match. But if you didn't fight back with them, they would eat you alive. So that was probably his way of testing. Okay, this is what I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna tell the guy, if he fights back, we're gonna have a hell of a match. But if he don't, I'm gonna eat him alive. So
that's why I had many matches with Gene and Ole Anderson, tag matches, and I always worked well. I had no problem working with them. They were very good to work with. They worked snug, and I liked it because I worked snug too. But I mean, everything was cool. It wasn't like overboard. They weren't hitting in the solar plex, stuff like that. But I enjoyed working with Ole and Gene Anderson because the matches were credible, believable, and that's what I liked. I like the matches to be believable.
And did you enjoy going down to Atlanta? You're working for Jim Barnett, right? Was Barnett
Yes,
there?
I did. Yeah. But I hardly had anything to do with Jim Barnett. I always dealt with Ole Anderson. So anytime I wanted to go back, I called Ole, and I always dealt with Ole. I just rarely saw Jim Barnett. But I enjoyed the territory because it was short drive territory. You're home every night. And, you know, you go to Augusta, Macon, Columbus, an hour and a half, 2-hour drive, you're home. It was really nice territory to be at the time.
The only miserable day, and you kind of touched on it, was Saturday morning. You get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, go do that Atlanta TV, then get in a car and drive to Columbus, do Columbus TV, then drive to Carrollton or Griffith, do Saturday night there. So you could work 4 or 5 times that one day there.
Yeah.
But you're a young guy, you got a lot of experience doing that too.
Absolutely. No, it's very good territory. I enjoyed it. And actually, I got my brother in there. You know, he was in Tennessee. I got him to go to Atlanta. It was great territory. I enjoyed it.
What was the difference in age when you guys getting into the business? Did he get in about the same way at the same time as you did?
Yeah, he's 5 years younger than me. He got in when he was 17. So when he broke into the business, I'd been working 5 years already in the business, but he was 17 when he started.
And when was
he was tall, tall, skinny kid too at that time, right?
Yeah, he was. And when he started, he didn't stay here in Quebec because he, like you said, he didn't have experience. He didn't go through all the training I went through. And you didn't want a Rougeau to come into the Montreal territory without the experience. Like when I broke in, I probably had the experience of a guy that had been working at least 2 years in the business when I started my first match. He didn't have that. He went out west. He went out to Stu Hart. He trained there at Calgary, and he went to Mexico, and he went, you know, paid his dues on the road. When he came back to Quebec, he had been in the business 4 or 5 years and experience from all over. He came back, he was let's say, polished worker.
You know, that's such an important thing. You don't want guys to learn how to wrestle in territories that they're going to stay in.
Correct.
You know, like when a guy came to WWF or WWE, you didn't want them to start, you know, on national or global television. You want them to start somewhere where nobody'd see them so they could learn how to work. And then when they get there, they figured it out.
Well, when I came into the WWF back then, I'd been in the business 15 years already when I started in WWF.
Right.
You know, so, you know, I came in.
And that's one of the things like today, you know, it's so different. Like when you came into the WWF back then, WWE now, name change, you had this massive experience from all these different territories, how to get over, all these different guys to wrestle with. You know, guys today, and I'm not taking any shot at them, it's just hard because they start at WWE. You know, a lot of them will come in and they learn on global television, and that's just almost impossible to do. It's so hard to do that and to be able to get over because you don't want people to see that. You want people to see the finished product, not the product as it's getting finished.
Yeah, the business is completely different today too. Like when I started, you had to learn, before starting to work, you had to learn about ring psychology, how to build a match. You can, you know, when I was 17, I had my first 1-hour Broadway match at 17 years old. Yeah. So, because back then there was a curfew at 11:30. I got in the ring at 10:25, and I had a match started at 10:30. We went till curfew at 11:30. I'm 17. That's experience. And for the last 15 minutes of the match, people were standing up, banging along the ring all over the place. To do that, you have to understand the psychology, but you have to learn. So back then, you had to learn. It's like a movie. To build a movie, you have to start. You have to build some suspense. You have some hardship. You look good. Then you get the heat. You know, you have to build it. You guys know about working to build a story in a match. Guys today, I don't think they do that. I remember first time we had a marathon match, was called like your Ironman match, with the Rockers at the WWF. That was Pat Patterson that had the idea of us with the Rockers doing the marathon match, going 1 hour with the team with the most falls would win. And Pat came up to me with that idea because Pat knew I could do hour matches. I had done some with him. I'd done some with Pierre Lefebvre. I did some with Don Serrano. I'd done many hour matches. So Pat says that would be good for the business, and it'll show the fans like, wow, these guys are athletes. These guys are credible. I said, yeah, no problem. First time we brought it up, I remember Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty said, 1 hour. What are we going to do for an hour in the ring?
Yeah.
And I remember telling him, look, don't worry. We're going to sit down and we're going to build it. We're going to go through stages in the match and, sequences and go through. So we have a few spots prepared, but the rest we're going to do ad lib in the ring. We're going to work with the crowd. Depending on the crowd reaction, you can take a turn towards the right, a turn towards the left. If something's not working, you don't just stick to your plan, because you have a script you have to stay in. It's not working, change it. Do something else. But we went through it. We had some great matches with them. So, but like you said, John, today, there's so many acrobatic moves. And I'm not taking anything away. I look at them. I couldn't do what they're doing today. Even in my prime, I couldn't do what they're doing today.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to do what they're doing today.
No.
Right.
And I have the ultimate respect for what they're doing. But the business has changed.
Yeah.
So and you guys both know, educating the wrestling fans. Right now, they're educated to what is going on in the ring, which is great. And they're doing great business,
It's
the successes. Yeah, it's changed. We put our wrestling. I remember little story here. And if I'm going too long, just tell me,
No.
Yeah, please.
When my son, I retired from the ring when I was 34. And it was 6 months before my son was born because I didn't want to have a child and never be home. Back then, WWF, we were on the road. I only got home 5 days a month. So when I retired, my son was born 5 months later. So I became a commentator and interviewer for the WWF. So my son, growing up when he was 5, 6, 7 years old, he was watching me doing the interviews and watching the matches. I have matches from when I started. Actually, I have one of my first matches on black and white TV. So I remember showing to my son. He says, "You wrestled on black and white TV?" Yes, I did. But when I showed him some of my matches when I was here in Quebec before WWF, and he was educated to what wrestling was in the 90s, and he was looking at matches from me in the late 70s, early 80s, and he says, "Dad, wrestling was really boring in your days, huh?"
Wow.
And you know what? The reason why I came back with Owen Hart, he had been asking me since he was 5, 6 years old, "Dad, am I going to see you in the ring one time? I'd love to see you wrestle." "Oh, maybe someday, maybe someday." By the time, at one point, it never went away. I figured it would just be a phase. And I figured I want to go back one more time just so he could see me in the ring. That's why I came to Vince and I said, "Vince, I'd like to come back one match. I wanted to do a boxing match." Vince says, "Why a boxing match?" I said, "Because I always took the business seriously. I respect the fans, respect the business. I always kept in shape. When I quit the business, I was 224, my real weight. I cut down to 214 when I was announcer. I stayed there for 6 years. When I wanted to do the boxing match, I want to get into the best shape of my life. So when I come back after 6.5 years out of the ring, I don't want the fans to say, 'Oh, wow, he's changed then.'" I came back at 195 for the boxing match. I was doing 1,500 sit-ups a day, 10 rounds of sparring. I did that for 6 months before the match. And when I came into the ring, I was the same weight.
Poor Owen.
The guys were ripping the heck out of him. They were saying, "Oh, and he's going to beat the crap out of you."
Oh, yeah. I was in the dressing room that night. I heard every bit of it. It was great.
Yeah.
John was probably the leader, Ripper.
Oh, was I ever? It was so much, that was so much fun.
And I was telling Owen, because months before, I'd go on the road to do the interviews and then say, "Where are you going?" "I'm going, I got to do my running right now and my workout." Jesus Christ, Ray, relax. I was down to 195 for the match. And so I cut down another 20 pounds, 19 pounds exactly. So when I got in, I could have gone 15 rounds, and I told Owen, I said, "Owen, I know the guys are going to be ribbing you and this and that." I said, "We're going to go out." I said, "What I want it to be credible. I don't want us to go plan a million spots. We only had the spot where he gave me that circular kick in the back of the head. That was it, where he could start getting some heat on me. But I said, don't let me hit you, and I'm not going to let you hit me. But I said, you know, we're going to go out and work. I'm not going to hurt you. But I said, I'm not going to let you hit me. So I said, try to hit me. You know, so then at one point, yeah, we used to start working. I let him a bit. But I wanted it to be credible. And they even offered, you know, we can shave some time off the rounds. We could do 2.5-minute rounds, you know. No, it's advertised at 3. We're going 3-minute rounds, you know. But, you know, like I said, that's from the upbringing.
You know what, though?
know?
I watched the whole thing. It was fantastic because I was a big fan of yours, and George Savallo, I'm a big boxing fan. So it was great to see all you guys in the ring together. Plus, the crowd was just crazy that night. But it was one of the best boxing working matches I've ever seen. You know, those things can be terrible. I mean, they can be awful.
Yes.
Right. I mean, there's a recipe for disaster when you put something together like that. And you guys it was a masterpiece. It was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, usually when you put boxing gloves on a wrestler, it turns into crap
it's
real quick.
The worst one I ever saw, Tarzan Tyler against Gino Brito.
Wow.
It was in Hull, Quebec.
Two tough son of a guns right there too.
Yeah, but they came in. The punches looked so bad. Tarzan was hitting him. I'm like, oh, please stop. It was horrible. But I wanted it to be credible, out of respect for the fans, out of respect for the business. I wanted it to look good. And actually, some people could think, was it a little stiff? I had a nosebleed because I told him, I said, let him in. You know, it was fun. My son was in first row. And like I said, that's the reason why I came back. He was in first row while Owen was getting the heat. I saw the tape of it. He's got his face behind the bars. He's looking. He's 6 years old. He doesn't know it's work. And at the end, I had him come up in the ring. I have a laminated picture of him in my arms where he's got his hand raised and I've got mine. That was a 6-year-old kid looking at my dad's the strongest. My dad's the best. That was a moment for me that I'll cherish forever. And I gave him a memory that he will cherish forever.
That's so cool. It's such a great thing, you know, for us. Like a lot of guys, as they got older, their children never got to see them, you know, and a lot of guys end up saying, you know, I really wish my kids could have seen me do something. That's wonderful that you had the opportunity to not only do it, but to do it in Montreal.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And to bring him into the ring. So he's inside the ring there with my dad, myself. In my corner, I had Dino Clavet, which is a provincial champion also. And there's Owen George. He's like, you know, you got 15,000 people there. That's pretty intimidating for a 6-year-old kid, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So, but it was fun. It was a nice memory.
We had a boxing match in Madison Square Garden one time. I think it was Matt Hardy. It was Matt Hardy and Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield. I mean, the guy who knocked out Mike Tyson. And Matt was back there. You know, of course, Matt's got gloves on. There's nothing you can do if you know, with Evander Holyfield. And he says, okay, how do you want me to throw punches? And Evander just says, I don't care. You're not going to touch me unless I let you. You know,
exactly. That's something like I told Owen, because he says, well, how do I get? I said, just come and try to hit me. Just try to hit me. And I said, you know, when you do, it's because I let you, you know, and but it was basically the same thing I did with Owen.
Right. Did you see when I'm always so interested in the 1980s? Did you see, like, when you're down in Atlanta and you're starting to come into WWE, but you haven't yet, and you're starting to see WrestleMania? Did you see what was happening in wrestling at the time? I mean, did you see that the territories were probably ending and that somebody with cable television was probably going to take over and that it was probably going to be Vince? Did you see all that was happening at that time?
Yes, I didn't know it was going to get so big, you know, but I could see that there was a movement. There was something going on. I thought in Quebec we'd be a little protected because of the language barrier. I said maybe we'll be okay there, but you know, then it was a movement. It was a tidal wave that went through the planet. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why Vince wanted to get us, my brother and I, because he wanted to conquer the French market and he needed French-speaking athletes. And I think Pat's the one that probably put in a good word for us, because I was tag team champions with Pat here, you know, and then Pat turned heel on me and we worked. And, you know, we did work an angle together. So Pat knew, and I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet or something, but Pat knew we could work. So he probably told Vince, I got these 2 guys in Montreal. They can speak French. You know, it'll be good for the market. They can work. That's when I got a call. Edward Carpentier is the one that called me, and they said, Vince would like, you know, to meet with you in WWF. I said, why? I said, I don't really want to go. And eventually, you know, Edward's trying to convince me. He says, that's where the future is. That's where it's going, and everything's going to happen. I can't hide that one part of you. If you have the opportunity, you get approached by the biggest organization in the world to be part of it. There's a part of you that's saying, I can't say no to this. You know, it's a golden opportunity. But at the same time, I knew the guys were on the road all the time, which for me was hell.
Right.
So I was like, what do I do? And, you know, I started, a lot of guys say, oh, I'm going to make some money. I was already financially okay. You know, I started investing in real estate when I was 17 years old. I bought my first piece of property. At 20, I bought 2 6-unit apartment buildings. You know, I always invested in real estate. So financially, I wasn't like, oh, finally I could get a break. I was okay. But at the same time, just for my career, it's like, wow, I could wind up in the major leagues here, you know, like in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I said, look, if they want to talk to me, I'm going to be in my house in Florida tomorrow. I'm flying tomorrow morning. I'll be at home at 12:30. They can call me tomorrow afternoon. And, you know, I said, in the conditions, I said, I want to be tag team with my brother. And if they want to just bring us in just to, you know, to be jabronis in the territory, no thanks, I don't need it. I'm not, you know, I just say, if you want to be used, okay. You know, just if they can respect that, fine. But if it's just to bring in, oh, we'll bring in and have a good set of jabronis for, no, thank you. And no disrespect for anybody to put anybody over. We all put people over, which is part of our business. But if you want to have a certain credibility, like here, we were main events. If we go there and we're less than nothing, we just killed ourselves here. I didn't want that. So if they're going to treat us okay, fine. And, you know, so anyways, the next day I got the call. They flew me up from Miami to meet Vince. They flew my brother in from Montreal, met Vince. We made our deal there. But it was coming. I saw it. And when it happened, when I remember, because I was wrestling for Gino Brito back then, when we came back from New York, my first stop, I called Gino. I said, Gino, can I come and talk to you? He said, sure. So I went from the airport straight to his house. And I explained that we're going to the WWF. And he says, you know, personally, he says, I hate it. He says, I don't want to lose you guys. But he says, if you had said no to that, he says, I would have said, you're stupid. You cannot pass this by. And I said, I knew you'd understand. And I said, I'm going to, because even Vince says, I said, it's going to be kind of awkward in Montreal. He says, look, if you don't want to finish your jobs, I'm going to put you on the payroll right now. You just don't have to finish up. I said, no. I said, I want to leave correctly. I came to see Gino. I'll finish up all the dates where we're advertised, you know, and we'll finish up correctly in territory. And then I'm going to go there. So he respected that. And we're still great friends today. You know, it's all a matter of respect.
Sure. It makes sense. You know, when Vince wanted to get Texas, he had a problem, especially in around Dallas, because the Von Erichs were so strong. He needed Kerry Von Erich. You know, that was the key piece. So to get Montreal, they needed you.
You got the Rougeau brothers. And the thing was, like I said, for the French market, we were airing in France every week, you know, and he wanted to run Paris. Well, the first show we did in Paris, my brother and I were there on the main event, and we sold out Paris. You know, and when we got there, we were treated like gods by the French there. We got invited to a club by Regine, which is compared to your Studio 54 in New York back in the 70s. When the 80s, it was just Regine in Paris. She was at the matches. She invited my brother and I over there. We spent the evening after that with Michael Douglas, the actor Sade, Grace Jones. You know, it's like, wow. You know, we were in the Paris match, was like your New York Times with Michael Douglas, you know, stuff like that in Paris. Why? Because we spoke French.
Right. Raymond, you mentioned a name, a guy that I never had the opportunity to mention, but also a guy that through my career I always had a great amount of respect for, and growing up looking at the magazine, Carpentier. I mean, he was to me considered one of the greatest all-time workers. What kind of person was he? And was he really as good as I thought he was when I was a kid?
What was his name again?
Carpentier. He did Eduardo Carpentier.
Oh, Edward Carpentier.
Carpentier, yeah.
You have to
My
say it in
French is
French.
good.
Edouard
And
Carpentier.
neither's my English. Neither's
He
my
was
English.
saying it in French. That was Oklahoma French.
Sorry, I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Edward was a great guy. Him and I were tag team partners for many years also. We were tag team champions here together. Edward and I got along well because, it's funny because my mom said I was born old. And when Edward and I were tag team partners, I was basically 24 years old. And him and I were tag team champions. We traveled together. We went to the gym together. He was a gentleman, first-class athlete, a gentleman, excellent worker, one of the first acrobatic wrestlers to really make it big. And he wasn't that big of a guy. He was probably only about 5'9",
Really?
but he
I
had
didn't know
big
that.
arms, massive chest, massive arms, great athlete. I love the guy. He was a great friend of mine.
And a great mind in a business, I understand, too.
I learned a lot from him. Like I said, being partners with him, I'd watch his style, I'd watch him wrestle. Our styles were different, but I could see the psychology. I mean, he was a master in the ring. He'd been in the ring. He was in the ring for 30 years. I learned a lot.
That's the story he's always got. He was a master in the ring because of his psychology in the ring. I think that's really kind of what attracted me to him. I used to watch the old tapes, and man, I just, guy was phenomenal. And as you said, he also introduced that acrobatic style into the top form to wrestling too. So I really
but he was a solid wrestler. I mean, him and I, we worked together. You remember Sailor White?
Oh yeah.
Sailor White was a snug wrestler and stuff. We liked that. We worked with him. I mean, they'd lay it in, whack. Nobody ever complained. You'd come out, you're marked all over. That's the business. But Edward was like that. He'd come in purple on the chest and marked. Never a complaint, never a word. I respected that.
Raymond, like 3 times, say in the modern era, you have like really booms in wrestling. You had a boom around, WrestleMania and Hulkamania back, in the 80s when you were there. In the late 90s, when Stone Cold and The Rock got hot, you had another big boom. And now you're going through another big boom as well with, the stuff they're doing now, which is insane. You got to work during one of those times that was people are going to remember forever, which is kind of cool because when you talk to guys who were huge names, but they wrestled in territories that weren't big, some people don't know them, and these were great talent. You got the opportunity to be there when everybody was watching the program. So forever, your name will always be associated with the WrestleMania era. How cool was it to be there during that time? And do you realize how big it was at that time?
Yes, I did. How cool was it? It was the coolest thing in the world. My first WrestleMania I wrestled on was WrestleMania 3, which we all know that was the big thing for years and years, I remember during the day walking out in the stadium. We had to be there at noon because they were afraid the traffic coming in, we'd be all late. I was at the building at noon. I walked out and I looked, I went, wow. The magnitude of it, it was just mind-blowing. Seeing the stars, Aretha Franklin, Mary Hart,
who was there, Mom? All those guys. It was so incredible.
That's where you realize how big wrestling had become, and the match Hogan Andre, there was an aura around that. Andre, he was phenomenal that match. We know how he was in pain, all that. The match they did, and it was just the intensity. They didn't have to do much. Just going out, standing, looking at each other, the fans were like, what's going to happen? It's just the electricity. I mean, it probably took me 2 days to come down from that for experiencing that and being part of it. Like you said, that was the Hulkamania at its peak, those years in the 80s, 86, 87, 88. Those were Hulkamania at its peak. I remember going through the airports, going through cities with them. The people were just like, almost like it's God walking through, I don't know. There was something very magical about it. And to have been able to experience it and live it, for that, I'm forever grateful. I mean, I consider myself one of the lucky people that were able to experience it, live it, And, you know, I'll take that to my grave, you know, that, wow.
Isn't it a cool experience when you do like your first big arena show, and that was the biggest of all time? So that's like times 10 for everything else. But when you walk out at noon, when you get there and you look around and you see this incredible football stadium, and you think this is going to be full tonight, you just sit there and think, you got to be kidding me. This can't really happen.
Exactly. Pinch me, somebody. I'm dreaming here. And what I did also is I was looking up at the seats way up top. I said, what are they going to see up there? I went up all the way to the top, and the ring looked about this big in the middle of the stadium, you know, but then there's the giant screens. So when they're on top, they're just looking at the screens because, right. And I was all the way up top looking down, and I just couldn't believe that there are going to be people that are going to come, pay for those seats, and look at a little miniature ring in the middle with a giant screen over it. It's just mind-blowing. It's, I don't know, it's all the intensity, the magnitude of it. You know, we grew up starting the business, wrestling small arenas, armories in the States and stuff like that. All of a sudden, you're in this building, going to hold over 90,000 people. It's like, what happened?
Real.
What happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got Hogan on the cover of Sports Illustrated, a wrestler. It was just an unbelievable time during that to see that. And, you know, people are getting the nuance of what's a great wrestling match and what isn't. And they talk about Hogan and the Giants, the wrestling. I say purist. I don't really agree with that term, but they'll say, oh, that wasn't a great match. It was a match that everybody will remember for the history of professional wrestling. It was a great match. You know, when you leave everybody happy, and something that people talk about now, 40 years later, that was a great match.
For me, they couldn't have done a better match for that time. The two people there, the time, the magnitude, the event, it couldn't have been better. You would have, you know, you would have somebody write a script out. That would be the perfect match for this event. That's what they did. They didn't have to run around and, you know, do a million backdrops and triple flips off the top rope. They did what they had to do for the business at that time, for that event. And for that, they will be etched in the history of wrestling forever.
You know, there's some great brother tag teams. You obviously got Mr. Briscoe there. You got the Funks.
Yeah.
You got Harlem Heat, the Steiners. You've got so many great brothers tag teams. Tag teaming with your brother, was that something that once he started getting the business, was that something that you always wanted to do?
When I was younger, no, it wasn't. I didn't see it. Well, it's because I started young and I was singles matches. I did some tag matches with my dad, but my brother was so small, so skinny and younger. I just didn't see us at the same place. When he came back,
sound like my older brother.
Yeah. So, but when he came back from the road, and he had gone to Mexico and Calgary and Tennessee and Atlanta, paid his dues, got the experience. When he came back here, and he was a different wrestler. And all of a sudden I saw, and he had put on weight, he was bigger, you know. I said, and they started putting us in tag teams. It just clicked. It was just there. And, you know, we didn't always get along, you know, because we have completely different personalities, which is fine. Everybody's entitled to be who they are. When you're younger, it's a little harder to deal with because if they're not like you, they're not okay. You know, right. As you get older, you accept people for their differences. So we did have some words outside the ring, you know, at times, which a lot of brothers do, which is normal. Yeah. But in the ring, the chemistry that was there, it was so easy. It just flowed. We knew what we were going to do. We knew where we were going to be. If something did something, we knew exactly where the other one was going to be. We knew what he was thinking. It was just there. And the thing that was magical about it, neither one of us tried to put the spotlight on themselves. It was for the team and for the match. That's where I think we meshed very well, because it wasn't an individual effort. It was a team effort. For the match, for the team, for the match, for the fans. The better match we have, the happier we were. And we had that same professionalism as far as wanting to give 100% in the ring and going out and doing the best we can with whoever we're working with. So we meshed very well in the ring.
Did you plan when you ended up wanting to retire because your son's being born? Did you think about commentary at the time, or did it just something that just kind of came up after you decided that you wanted to be off the road?
No, actually, when I considered retiring, it was actually 5 months before I gave my notice. I'm not an impulsive person. I was at a point, it was after WrestleMania in '89. I was like, the road, was just getting to me. Just at one point, it gets to you.
Sure.
And I was thinking, at one point, why am I still doing this? And I went look at all of my investments, my income. I said, I don't need to work anymore. Why am I doing this? I've been on WrestleMania, I've traveled throughout the world and all that. I'm not happy now. I want to be home. But like I said, I'm not impulsive. So I wanted to wait at least a couple of months, 2-3 months, to make sure it's not just a phase I'm going through. And then, okay, I got through it and want to continue. At that point, I gave my notice in August. I talked about it with my brother, and he was tired of the road also, because I thought of the team also. Because if I leave him stranded out. That's not cool either. We had a good career, a great career together. Out of respect for the team, I wanted to talk to him, and he was at the same place as me. So we waited. We gave our notice after SummerSlam '89, but in March, I already knew I wanted to leave. We gave our notice at SummerSlam, and I told Vince, I want to finish at Survivor Series. I wanted to give him a 3-month notice because I knew we had an important place in the company as far as tag teams. I wanted him to be able to bring in a new team, fade us out slowly, bring in a new one. He won't even feel the transition, out of respect and gratitude for what I had been through in the WWF. Vince says, you can't leave. He says, I've only just begun what I wanted to do with you guys. I have so many plans. I want to do this. I said, Vince, if you'd have told me this a year ago, I'd have been the happiest guy in the world. I said, it's just, that's not where I am right now. I just want to go home. So he says, yeah, but give me a week. I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. And he wanted to put us tag team champions, wanted to do this, wanted to do that. He's going to make us an offer we couldn't refuse. I said, Vince, I understand. I said, you're probably going to come back with something extraordinary. But I said, the thing is, I said, oh, my dog's barking. But I said, the thing is, I said, here it's a grind. You're on the road, you're going, you go. You can't be part-time. You have to be on or you're gone. And I said, I just don't want to be here anymore. I want to go home. So he said, just give me a week. Anyways, I said, okay. But I said, Vince, my mind is made up. And I said, it's not about the money. And I said, I think, John, you know me enough. I've never fueled on glory. It's never been a thing of mine. The first thing I was taught, I'll just make this little parenthesis. Luigi Massera, when I started training, he says, Ray, first thing I want to teach you about your publicity. You can read it, enjoy it, but don't believe it. I never forgot that. And he told me that 56 years ago. I never forgot that. So, when you see your publicity, oh, the greatest of all time, that's all publicity. When you go home, you're yourself. And so I didn't need the attention. I didn't need that. I'm happy being home. I love being in the woods with my dog. I love getting up in my own bed. I love, just being home. And so anyway, so Vince said, just give me a week. I said, okay. That night, I hardly slept. Every time I managed to somehow fall asleep, I'd wake up in a cold sweat. I'm in a dressing room somewhere. Why am I still on the road? I wanted to go home. I woke up that morning. I called his office, talked to his secretary, asked Vince. I said, just tell Vince it's Raymond Rougeau. Tell him I don't want him to come back with an offer. I just ask him, please respect the fact that I want to go home. And when we had our meeting, because Vince is trying, I said, Vince, I only have 2 words for you. His eyes kind of lit up because normally it's not really a nice thing,
Yeah.
I said, I have only 2 words for you. I said, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for these incredible experiences that I've lived. Thank you for this, but I just want to go home. So he talked to Pat and he says, I have to find a way to keep him. I have to find a way to keep him in the company. I didn't know that. That's where he approached me. He says, Ray, what would you think about becoming an interviewer and commentaries. And I said, Vince, I've never had training for that. And actually, personally, I don't even think I was very good on interviews. You know, I was the more reserved one. My brother was more flamboyant, which was good. And I was the more, I don't know, I just wasn't natural in interviews and stuff. Vince says, you'll do fine. Don't worry about it. So he gave me a mic. Here you are. Now we're going to start doing interviews. My first question, I said, what's the schedule? So I didn't want to be back on the road. If it was going to be that, I'd continue wrestling. But back then, I think you guys probably remember, but once every 3 weeks, we taped Challenge and Superstars. And it was 2 nights for 3 weeks of taping for 2 nights. One night was 3 weeks of Challenge. The next night was 3 nights of Superstars. So I had to do two 2-minute interviews per show. So for Challenge, I'd do 6 interviews, Superstar 6 interviews, then I'm off 3 weeks. So basically, I'd go out 17 times a year. So I'd work basically 34 days a year, and I'm being paid every week. I said, okay, so that's the schedule I can live with. But I was happy because it kept me in the business that I love, but I didn't have to be on the road all the time anymore. So it was fun. I could still see the guys, be part of the business, not getting the body beat up all the time, and still be part of the business. So which was fun. And it was a new challenge for me because when I started, I was doing French interviews, which, okay. And I would translate simultaneously what the guys would say. Then Vince started having me do English interviews. He says, right, you could do English interviews for stuff. Yeah, I guess. I started doing that. Then he enjoyed what I was doing. Then they started having me do live interviews on the ring, replacing Gene Okerlund at one point, because Gene was tired of doing the in-ring interviews. I did that for 2, 3, 4 years, I don't know, in the ring. Those were live. Those were a little more stressful for me because now you're doing it live. And Vince is at the end of the monitor. You know, he knows what he wants. That's kind of stressful. But at the same time, I did it. And I developed a passion for commentating. And I loved it. To be honest, I enjoyed my commentating career as much as I did my wrestling career because it was a mental challenge. I had to develop something. It was a whole new training. And then at one point, I became the main commentator for all the French broadcasting throughout the world for 13 years. So I was the anchor man. I was your Jim Ross. I was your Mike for 13 years. And in France, Belgium, Switzerland, Africa, they have a different dialect. I had to adapt the language to where, let's just say you're English from England, English from the United States is not the same. But certain terms in the United States, nowadays, the world's smaller, they'll accept more. But in France, they were very picky about certain terms you will use. So I knew their terms in Europe. So I had to do them, to develop a language that would be an international French, because I was airing in Quebec and airing in France, completely different dialects. So I had to navigate in between. So for me, that was a great mental challenge, and it stimulated me a lot. And I really had a good time doing it, and I had a blast. So that's how it came about. It's from Vince wanted to keep me in the business, you know, so.
And do you still have any desire to do much of that? I mean, I know you've got you've got a lot of responsibility, which we're going to have to let you go for pretty quick to go do that to get back to City Hall. But would you like to go back and do any more? Do you kind of miss it? Is it something, you know, I guess, you know, like one of the old boys, you always just kind of, it's always fun to go back.
You got it exactly right. You can take the person out of the business, but you don't take the business out of the person. When they called me back in 2016 to come back to do the 12 pay-per-views per year on the network, you know, my answer was yes right away. And the question was, there was not, how much are you paying me? I didn't care. Basically, it was my main criteria. I want to have fun. Right. Where I'm in my life, I want to have fun. If I'm going to come, I'm going to have a good time. I'm glad to come back. And it was Tom Carlucci I was talking. You remember Tom Carlucci?
I know Tom very well. What a great guy. Yeah.
Well, Tom called me and I said, Tom, if I'm going to have fun, that's my #1 criteria. You pay me what you pay the other guys. I don't care. It's not for the money. I want to do it to have fun. So he says, Ray, you're going to have a blast, which I did. We did it right up until the pandemic. Then, and I would have continued because I was having a great time. We go out once a month. So it's not like I'm on the road all the time. Once a month, I fly in on Saturday with the pay-per-view Sunday, fly out Monday. I'm off for the rest of the month. I have my schedule 1 year in advance. I can plan my hunting trips, flying up my plane up north, everything. I know a year in advance what I'm doing. You know, it was perfect. I would have done it forever. And when the pandemic came, you know, they closed the borders. Then there were the events, no crowds, this and that. Then the network was sold to Peacock. And what I was told was that when they told, you know, in the deal with Peacock, we have this international role, all the languages. It's, we don't care about that. We care about the English and the Spanish, you know. So they changed their way of doing things, and they don't have the live international row anymore and stuff like that. So things changed. I don't have any resentment. I don't have any hard feelings towards it. I was sad it ended because I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the product. I enjoyed the boys. I enjoyed the matches. I enjoyed the events. I enjoyed being there. It was just great. I wouldn't have stopped it. And when I got the call, it was Ray. I had a call a week before. They said, look, things are looking good. We might, for the first time, have you guys fly back now because the borders had opened. We're going to fly you back for WrestleMania. Well, great. You know, it's not sure yet. We might happen. Okay. This is spring of 2021. And when all of a sudden I got the call, I said, maybe it's happening. And then they said, Ray, I hate to give I hate to make this call. Okay, what is it? And he says,
was it Tommy again? Was it Tommy?
No. What's his name? Michael Calabrese.
Hey, Michael. Okay.
Michael Calabrese. He says, I hate making this call. I said, what is it? And he says, it's not going to happen. They're changing. And he says, man, I hate this. He says, it's not my call. I think it sucks. That's what exactly he said. I think it sucks. But he says, it's above me. I said, Mike, I said, you're just doing your job. Don't feel bad about it. It happens. It's a business. And I understand it completely. I said, on a business standpoint, they've been paying me for the last year, sitting home doing nothing. I said, on a business standpoint, if they would have stopped paying me a year ago, I would have understood. But they kept paying me right up until now. So I said, you know, I'm grateful. I'm sad. I said, I'm sharing with you. I feel sad, disappointed. I was really looking forward to WrestleMania and getting back into the saddle. But I said, I understand it's business. It's not personal. And he says, Ray, he says, it's not personal. And he says, they love you here. And I said, Tom, I said, Mike, I said, if something comes up, I said, we know how this business changes. Something comes up, you guys, want to do business with me again? I said, feel free to call. He says, Ray, the door will never be closed for you at the WWE unless you close it. I said, I'm not closing it. I said, the door's always open. Something comes up, I'll be glad to come back. So that's what happened there. But yes, I do miss it. For the first, I'll say right up until last year, every time I knew a pay-per-view, because I still watched the show, and at times here in Montreal, because it airs in French in Montreal, they have two local commentators. At times, if one is not there, either sick or on vacation or something, they call me. I go do the commentary. So once or twice a year, I go to still call the Raw in Montreal for the Quebec network in French. Which October 2nd, I'll be doing Raw in Montreal again in a couple of months. And I'm looking forward to it because it's in my blood. It's there. You can't take that away. I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm very passionate about the business. I'm the mayor now, like you said. I'm very passionate. I've been in politics now for 22 years, 22 consecutive years.
Well, and tell us how that happened. Tell us how that happened. How did that transition happen?
Well, it happened in 2002 when we stopped doing broadcasting at one point, February 2002. Then I said, okay, now I'm going to completely retire. I got approached in the spring of 2002 by a woman that was going to run for mayor here in the city where I live. And she approached me to be part of her team as a city councilor. I had no aspirations of going into politics. didn't even have the desire. But then again, I look at life as opportunities and experiences. I figured, well, it's something that I don't know, something that could be interesting. I don't know. I said, give me 48 hours to think about it, because if I do go in, I will, I'm going to give you 100%. If I'm not willing to do that, I'd rather leave somebody else that will give 100%. I accepted. I got elected as city councilor. I got elected again in 2005, 2009. In 2009, a funny thing happened. You know how sometimes in politics there's a wave that goes through it. All of a sudden everybody wants a change and this and that. Our whole team got knocked off except me. I guess, people appreciated me in that. So even with the wave, I survived the tidal wave. I was there for 4 years at opposition by myself against a very hostile group that was there, that their mission was to have me resign, have me quit. I said, that's not part of my vocabulary. So I did my 4 years at opposition. We were in the newspapers every week. My gripes with the mayor, that's fine. Did it. It developed a passion. And in 2013, for the next election, everybody wanted me to run for mayor. They said, you'll knock them off, this and that. I said, I know. But at that point, I felt that yes, I will win the election. But the thing is, the night of the election, I'll be happy because I won my election. He's gone. But then for me, I felt like it would be a 4-year sentence starting. I didn't want that. So I said no. So I went and got the guy that I wanted to run for mayor, and he ran for mayor. I was his deputy mayor. He got elected. Our whole team got elected. 2013. 2017, he tried to convince me to run for mayor. I said, no, continue. I was running half the city anyways with him because he didn't like what he was doing. So I said, we're doing a great job together. You do the PR, you do the thing, I'll run the city. Don't worry about it. So we did. I convinced him to stay in 2017. In January 2021, he says, Ray, in the next election in November, January 2020, he says, in November 2021, this is 1.75 years away, I'm out of here. He says, I'd give you the keys to the city right now. I said, no, you got to finish your term. And I said, if you want to take 2 weeks off a month, do it. I'll run the city, no problem, but finish your term. And then I had to make a decision. Either I'm going to continue in politics as a councillor, I could wind up with a bunch of hostile people against me again, or I'm going to go, like you say, go big or go home. That night, I went to the bath. I went to pee at 3 in I left. It just clicked. I made my decision and I never wavered, never went back. I'm running for mayor. And I told him the next day, I made my decision, I'm running for mayor. He had tears in his eyes. He was so happy because I would continue things that we were building. And, I built a team, ran for election. I got elected and my whole team got elected in 2021 November. It'll be 3 years in November that I'm there. And I could tell you now, I plan on running again in November 2025. Next election.
Are you term limited in Canada?
No. No. Good. But this I could say will probably be my last. I mean, right now it's my 6th consecutive term.
So we're getting a political scoop. We're getting a political scoop right now. That 2025 will be your last term.
There you go. There you go.
Are you saying that?
But the thing is, at one point, you have to know when it's time to go. You don't want to overextend you.
Now, wrestling's the same thing. You use a lot of the same analogies in politics as you used in wrestling.
Same thing. So, basically, this is my first term as mayor, and I have a lot more plans, a lot more things planned for a second term. So if I do 2 terms as mayor, I'll have been there 8 years. What I would like to do is complete what I've started now and do, a few more things in the next term, but prepare for the next generation. Because when you want to run for mayor, I don't like the way the law is. Anybody can just decide, I think I'm going to run for mayor. They run for mayor, get in. They don't have a clue how a city is run. They don't. For 2 years, they're just learning how, so things slow down to a halt for 2 years while they're trying to understand the procedures and the way things are and the bylaws and how you have to proceed. So what I personally would like is to prepare one of my counselors that said I would have an aspiration to take the lead and to prepare him for 4 years. Then I step out. that person would step in and there would be a continuation. So I'm looking ahead. And at that point, see, when I'm done with this term in November 2025, I will have been there for 23 consecutive years. That's longer than my wrestling career.
Wow.
I wrestled for 18 and a half years. I did commentary for 17 years. And I've been in politics in November, will be 22 years.
Yeah, but that's got to make 103.
I was just going to say that. Don't even add it up because some of them were done concurrently, you know, they were at the same time.
Did you ever think about running for something bigger?
Like Premier, Trudeau?
Somebody approached. I have pictures with the Prime Minister of Quebec right now, which when he sees me, we're in big places. Raymond, how are you? He says, here we have the mayor of Rawdon, Raymond Rougeau, former wrestler. He did that with a whole room there, you know, introduced me. All the other politicians like, wow, we're nothing here compared to you. I was approached by a person at the provincial government right now just to see if I would have any interest, but maybe in going into the provincial level. I don't have that. I don't have that aspiration now. You see, what I like at the municipal level is I'm very close to the concrete, what's happening close to my city, close to the citizens. And the realization is the things that I've done, I can see when I'm driving down the street, we did that, we did that, we did that. When you get on higher level, then it's spread a lot further. It's a lot more impersonal. I like the closeness of it and the concrete realization of it.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't understand. You know, I see it more obviously, you know, because I'm in the States and it's closer to me here. But people, it's so much more important, your local officials than your national officials. Your local officials directly affect your life. Now, the national officials can direct the national policy, but that local official, that's the one that directly affects your life. That's why local officials are so important. And in my view, a lot of times much more important than your national officials.
That's the way I see it too. I'm not saying that they're not important but like you said, it's on a different level. But for us, see, I had a citizen last week. He's trying to get an appointment to meet me about something. 11:30 this morning, he was in my office for half an hour. He got to sit and talk with the mayor. And we settled, you know, we discussed this problem and this and that. I gave him some advice, you know, but that's the accessibility to it. It is not impossible to talk to your mayor, but try to talk to your prime minister. You know, you can't do that. You want to have a meeting. If, you know, a citizen wants a meeting with the president of the United States, that's not going to happen. But if he, you know, if at one point, depending on what it is, but if he wants to talk to his mayor or talk to, you know, a senator, even a senator is far, but to their mayor, they will have that access, you know. I mean, not for everything, but yes, it is attainable. That's what I like about it. And when, you know, I go here, people say, Mr. Mayor, how are you? So thank you for such a project you guys did. Hey, this great, you know, you get the feedback right away. It's not 2,000 miles away. It's right in your own city, you know. And we built parks. We did things. I look at my granddaughter playing in the park. We built that. That's fun. That's satisfying.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the gratification there too.
I'm sitting there watching her, and I remember when there was nothing there, and we did that. And I'm looking at my granddaughter having fun there. There's nothing that can beat that.
Raymond, you had 3 great lives, 3 great careers. You had a terrific Hall of Fame wrestling career. You've had a terrific Hall of Fame commentating career. You've now been the mayor, a very popular mayor from everything I've read about. Are you going to be bored if in 6 years, whenever your next term is up, or are you ever going to? Is there going to be a 4th career?
Who knows? I never even would have thought there would have been a political career. But the thing is, yes, when I think about it, comes some people that when I ran for mayor last time. Why would you want all those problems? Why? Because yes, you deal with problems, but for me, it's not problems, it's finding solutions. And it's so mentally stimulating, intellectually stimulating. I'm talking with engineers, lawyers, contractors, you know, I mean, for legal advice on this and that. You learn so much. That for me is the adrenaline, it's knowledge. And I don't know, that's what I'm afraid I would miss. Because, you know, some people could say, you know, you've had a hell of a political career. You could just retire in a year and a half and do what? Fly my plane? I do that. You know, go fishing? I do that. Sit on my balcony? You know, I have to do something. You have to keep your mind busy. And, you know, I still work out. My average is 28 days a month. Every morning I work out for an hour and a half. I'm in great physical shape, great mental health. You know, I don't take any medication. I have no blood pressure, no high blood pressure, no low blood pressure. I don't take a pill. I'll probably take twice in a year. I'll take 2 aspirin because maybe I have a headache that day and I have something. I'll take 2 aspirin. That's all I take. You know, I don't know. You need to keep busy. That's what I think. It's what keeps you young. I've seen so many people, once they retire and they go home, it's just like they just close in and they like dwindle away. And it's like they, you know, like a flower that just all of a sudden dwindles down and dies. I don't know. Even now, I was thinking 2025 is another year and a quarter for the election. I'm like, what would I do if I stopped in a year and a quarter? I'd miss it. And I'd need something, but I don't have anything planned. And I don't know if anything would show up. And I don't know. I need this stimulation. I go to City Hall. When I walk in, I don't go in, oh, I have to go to my office. I walk in, I go to every employee we have, say hello to them. How are you? They come in, oh, Mr. Mayor, how are you? I said, great. How was your weekend? Good. I have 135 employees. I salute every employee that I see there. And they all see me, they light up because why? I'm happy to be there and they feel that. You know, we just had a negotiation for, you know, the convention for the workers, their, how do you call it in French? You know, the union, they have a work contract for like 5 years, you sign a work agreement or so, whatever.
Yeah.
What's the proper name for that in English?
We call it just a labor agreement.
Okay. We just signed with our fire department for 5 years. It was one of the best negotiations we've ever had. I've been through 4 of them. This was the best. Why? There was a relationship of confidence on both sides. They weren't thinking like, well, the employers are trying to screw us. And we're not saying they're trying to screw. We went, sat down in 5 meetings. We came up with an agreement for the next 5 years. I crossed the fire department. They're coming back with a fire truck. Everybody knows my car. They cross me. They're waving at me as I go by. I'm waving to them. That wasn't always like that. That's the environment I live in the city. It's a great environment. And like I said, I don't know. I love it. It's stimulating. I see we accomplished so much. I can't just do nothing. You know, and if something came back with the wrestling for commentating, hey, I'm all in. You know, I can do more than one thing.
Well, we would really see your passion for your job being a mayor there of your city there. That's good. But you got another passion. You briefly mentioned it: hunting and flying your plane. You were probably one of the first guys that really started flying the plane around. You got enough time to kind of tell us how that evolved in your career, and what are some of your flights now that you take?
Yeah, well, actually, this past June, it's been 40 years since I've been a pilot. Wow. June has been 40 years. And, you know, private pilots, many times, because it's not their job, they'll have 200, 300, 400 hours, you know, of flying time. I've got 3,300 hours of flying. And out of that, I've got over 2,300 hours up in the bush where the Eskimos are and stuff like that. So I've been through some heavy weather, you know, extreme conditions. I'm a bush pilot in my heart. That's what I do.
Well, you got to answer this question before you go. My fascination, the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. You ever fly into those things? I mean, one of you, that's got to be it. Mother Nature at her absolute finest there. Tell us a little bit about that.
I flew up to where, if you look where Nunavut is, that's where the Eskimos are. I was up there, and I used to go caribou hunting up there. And with my son, him and I and my dog would fly up there, set up tent. My closest neighbor with the plane was 60 miles from me. So there's nothing with us. You get sick, you're going to die there. But basically, in the evening, we'd go out, we'd look at those northern lights. it's like they're almost touching you because we're so far north. The most beautiful thing you want to see. You can see pictures of it, but when you're there live and you look at it, there's nothing like it. I mean, it comes down like fingers from the sky, kind of like it's going to sweep you up and take you up like aliens are going to take you. I used to fly up there. I'm sure there are certain places where I've walked where probably the first human being that's ever stepped there.
Oh, you know,
because there's nothing and you're so far away. I mean, I fly from here. It's 8 hours flight north. That's a long ways. And
it's almost the North Pole then, right?
It's, yeah, actually, I go beyond to where trees grow. There's no trees that grow anymore. It's just mountains of rock, and it's in the permafrost. The ground never thaws out. Even in August and July, it's still frozen. I mean, it starts snowing in August, you know? But that's how far I've flown. And as far as flying, the passion came from when I was a kid. I remember when I was a kid in grade school, grade 3, I remember actually, they'd have us draw pictures and I would draw airplanes that were flying in the sky and draw little cloud stuff. And I remember when I grew up a little more, I would look into the sky, looking at a plane, and I just imagine, what is he seeing right now? What I imagine looking at the earth from the sky since I was a kid. So at one point, I went and got my pilot's license, and you know, like I said, 40 years later, I'm still flying. At one point, from 1995 till 2000, I used to fly myself to Stanford 26 times a year with my own plane. So I did have to rely on the airlines and canceled flights and scheduled. No, my planes, that plane I had, because I've got my seaplane in my backyard here because I live on a lake. But I had the other plane at the airport here, 15 minutes from my house. So I drive there. I was member of the gate program with Customs, hand pass for Canada. I just file a flight plan, call Customs, boom, boom, boom. I'm going to land at Westchester County Airport. I'll be parked at White Plains at the, it was called Westchester County Airport. I can't remember the flight base operator. Anyways, I parked there and there was a time. If the Customs wanted to see, I was already pre-cleared for Customs. If they wanted to see me, they would be waiting for me there. When I land, the time's up, nobody's there. I call Customs, they give me a number, thank you, close my flight plan. I go in the studio. If they say, Ray, we have technical problems, we're late, or Vince is coming in, we have to stop because yes, it is. I don't care. I've got the keys to my plane. You know, when I'm done, okay, take care. See you next week, guys. Go back, file a flight plan. I didn't even have to land in Montreal to clear Customs. I'd land at the small airport, 15 minutes from my house. If Customs wanted to see me, they'd be waiting there. I land, they're not there, check the time, I call, they give me a confirmation number, thank you, put my plane in the hangar, 15 minutes later, I'm home. I did that 150 times in 5 years, flying to New York and back myself. So, and I loved it. The thing was, I think you can tell I'm a passionate person. I'm passionate. I was passionate about the business, passionate about commentating, passionate about politics, passionate about flying. I think that's what keeps me young. I'm just passionate. You know, being able to do that, flying to New York, not having to go to the airport, security and all this stuff, you know, the delays. Flying myself, I'm a contact New York approach, you know, give my plane number. I'm flying in with the jets. I fly into Westchester County with my small plane. I got 2 jets in front of me, 2 jets behind. I'm in the middle. They ask me, Papa Kilo Quebec, can you keep your speed up? No problem. I come over the threshold at my cruising speed instead of landing speed to keep up the distances with the jets. I'm having a blast. At one point, I had to stay over in Stanford for 2 days because in the next day I had to do something. I had the afternoon off. I went to the airport, took my plane, flew on Long Island, went to Montauk, flew, landed right there. There's the airport strips right along the beach, walked along the beach all afternoon, fly back to Stanford. You know, life can't get any better than that, you know.
Yeah, good for you, man. Good for you.
And, you know, talking about flying, you know, you talked about the things that I've succeeded in life that I've been passionate about. Another passion is my son. My son that I had in the ring when I was 6, well, he was born in 1990, April. He's 30, he turned 34 now. When I was a kid, I brought him a couple of times to Stanford. I had him sitting on my knees, pulling on the yoke here while I'm flying. you know, he's 5 years old, 6 years old, you know, and I'm flying, you know, and I taught him how to fly before he even took his pilot's license. And the funny thing is, the first day he went to the school to learn how to fly, they got in, it was like an initiation flight, so he's taxiing the plane. The instructor looks, says, "This isn't the first time you've touched an airplane." He says, "My father has a plane, he's a pilot." It's okay, because he was too comfortable in it. Right now, he's 34. He's an airline pilot for Air Transat. He's captain at 34 years old on the Airbus A330, which has 400 passengers behind.
Wow.
At 34 years old, he's very young for that. In his first commercial job he got, he was at Air Inuit up north where the Eskimos are. He was the youngest pilot there. And he was there for 6 years. When he left there, he was giving instruction. He was an instructor for them up there when he was basically 26, 27 years old, 26 years old. And then he went to Air Transat, which is a big airline. And right now, for the last 4 months, now, because he was first officer, now he's commander. He's the captain on the plane. He's left seat. And he's 34 years old. I look at that. Wow, I'm so proud of him, you know. Airline pilot, 34 years old, you know, flying the jumbo jets, you know, it's like, what more could you ask for in life?
Exactly. Well, good for you, man. Thanks so much, Raymond, for your time.
Raymond,
today.
thank you so much. I've been so looking forward to when Mr. Brisco told me that we had you on the show. I've been so looking forward to it, and you know, had a problem getting on for, you know, obviously it's a couple Southern guys don't know anything about technology. So
no problem. Hey, and I want to thank you guys for having me on, because like I said, I still love the business. You guys are part of the business, and I love you guys, both of you. I have very fond memories of both of you. You are always great to be around. You're good people. And I hope that at one point we'll be able to see each other in person again.
Good. Me too.
Yep.